Well, if you followed the other videos I've done on Halloween Ends in the Green Trilogy, or whatever we're calling what David Gordon Green did, I've been mainly critical of his effort. But I want to be fair-minded, and I will do some videos pointing out to the positive aspects. But here we're going to be critical again because he said some pretty strange things about what he's going to plan to do with The Exorcist and the creative vision, or so-called creative vision, he's going to bring to the table.
I'm not leaning into what Friedkin did, but it is going deep into who Chris McNeil is and what she brought to the table. Without giving away too much, the tools and insights that she's utilised over 50 years find a new application. Ellen's the one we've brought on board, and we filmed 8 days with her a year ago to do some technical and creative explorations. And next week, we get back in the ring. So to answer your question, Friedkin's not involved in this. If he's as good as John Carpenter at making music, we'll get him to do a song in the movie. He can do a trombone version of Tubular Bells.
Well, the nicest thing you can say about these comments is they are just very, very strange. You get the joke he's trying to make that this trilogy is not the John Carpenter trilogy. We know this. This is the Green trilogy. John Carpenter just did the music. That's mainly his role. He gave some advice. He did some other things, but this is basically the Green trilogy. John Carpenter's name is attached, but Green is the main creative force. He's telling people right away, this is not going to be really the Friedkin trilogy. This is going to be his trilogy again. I think we all know that. I guess the question would be, why wouldn't you want at least some advice in doing this version of The Exorcist? And he does say, I guess, which is nice to say that the lead actress, they're going to lean on her. But why not the director? He doesn't particularly care. I think that ties into the backlash with Halloween Ends in terms of how he reacts to it and kind of frankly, his indifference.
And he's even asked, how do you respond to negative feedback for Halloween Ends? It's funny when someone says, build your dream house on this real estate using this title and these characters. Everybody's going to find a different little thing that's meaningful for them and they'll make it their own. That's what I did. For every bite of backlash, you also get people that are thanking you for taking it to a new place and keeping it alive and full of love.
Some people will love it, some people will hate it, but it's his thing. He gave his version, and people should respect that. Now, I think there's two things going on. One is that he's an auteur. Good or bad, that's definitely what he envisions himself as being. He's an auteur director. And you can be an auteur director. There's nothing wrong with being an auteur per se. There is a difference, however, between being an auteur and having a vision and the vision actually being good. And I think the best comparison is Christopher Nolan for his trilogy with the Batman films, because you can definitely say something very similar, that they also had a very divisive, polarized response. That a lot of people liked Batman Begins, some people did not like Batman Begins, most people loved The Dark Knight, but then with The Dark Knight Rises, it was very split again. A lot of people hated it. I'm more on the hate side, by the way, but a lot of people loved it, and we're going in a circle that you'd say, well, whatever else it is, it's the Christopher Nolan trilogy. It's his vision. We got to see his vision. It's a strong artistic vision, and that is what it is. And you can have a strong artistic vision, but you can still be criticized. And I think for me, the best case you can make for David Gordon Green is he's a very stylistic director. And clearly the style of each film in his trilogy seems to have a distinct personality, so on and so forth. But in terms of having a cohesive narrative, that's, I think, where this thing is not very strong or impressive. And frankly, to me, all they keep doing in this trilogy is stealing from Halloween Part 4, Return of Michael Myers. Like, they're literally just cannibalizing that particular film and just doing different versions of that film. And that is it. They're not really doing anything more. So I think there's also a key difference that Nolan, whatever else, was trying to do something a little bit more creative. Being fair to both sides, you can say the same thing, saying, well, why do we think just because Christopher Nolan had a vision, it was even a good vision? Well, I would agree, and I'm not going to do a full-blown analysis, because obviously his trilogy of Batman films is very hard to analyze because there's so much going on. But my rough judgment is that Batman Begins was good, but had a lot of flaws. Dark Knight was pretty great, but still had some very strong flaws, especially towards the end. But Dark Knight Rises is a complete mess. It's really incoherent. It's really sloppy. It's very lazy in many places. It's really shocking that it's the same director. It just doesn't feel like these are the same characters. This is even the same story or even the same universe. It just feels so radically different from the other two films. But nevertheless, on the whole, again, it's not the greatest story, but it's cohesive enough you can say it is a story. I really can't say that about the Green Trilogy. It doesn't feel like this is a real story that continues from beginning, middle to end. It seems to be something else entirely. It just seems he's doing a story for one film. He abandons that story, does another story for another film, and does another story for another film. And he doesn't particularly care if they're connected or linked. There just seems to be a very bare connection between one film to the next film to the next film. He just wanted to do his version of Halloween. Does the story make any sense? He doesn't care. Do the themes really line up or cohere? Doesn't care about that either. He just wanted to do his vision, and he did it. And people are supposed to be like, ah, well, it's a strong vision. Yeah, you can say it's a strong vision, but it still can be criticized as weak in so many places. I think with Nolan, what we got is both style and substance. You can criticize Nolan on both levels, by the way. There's definitely things with the style and substance you can disagree with. Was that the right decision for Batman to do this or that? That's perfectly fine. But overall, there is more going on than just fancy tricks. There's a lot of quote deception and phoniness going on in the Nolan films. He's trying to trick you into thinking certain things. That's all cinema. That's fine. Yes, it's made up, it's fiction. But I think there's something more substantive. And I think that's where this whole Halloween trilogy has gone off track. There's a lot of stylistic tricks, and it is visually amazing in many places. But beyond the visual display, it's not much else. And you can do filmmaking that is primarily visual, like Tim Burton, Ridley Scott, even Stanley Kubrick. It's mainly about what we're seeing. What is the story underneath? They don't particularly care. They're more concerned with how things are visually presented. And those can be good films, those can be great films. But I think beyond the visual style, there's really not much here. It's just they're visually dazzling in many places, but that's about it in terms of the actual story or characters or plots or even the deeper themes. They just seem all over the place. They're just rambling, they're incoherent. Given these remarks, they're not shocking to me. It just shows kind of his attitude towards, again, just a lot of things with the genre and other directors. It's whether it's even a good story or even a good style. Yes, Nolan did his version of the Batman. This is not the Batman that shows up in the comics, but it's not totally unrelated either. I think he had a healthy back and forth with the source material. It seems with David Gordon Green, it's just these are his films and these are his film universes. And if you don't like it, that's about it. But he's not really concerned with whether it even makes sense or is coherent. It just makes sense to him. And that's what's important.